Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm your host, Jed Brown, founder of Low Season Traveller, and this week we're joined by Olivier Ponty, who is the Vice President of Insights at ForwardKeys. Now, ForwardKeys is one of those organisations which you may not have heard of unless you've worked in the travel industry. It's a big data company which monitors and tracks air passenger movements from all over the world and has the largest, most complete and up-to-date set of data around. Here at Low Season Traveller, we use ForwardKeys data to help us to understand when the key booking periods are for travel during the low seasons so that we can ensure that we are marketing the right destinations at the right times to the right people. And we thought that you, our loyal listeners out there, might be interested to learn more about ForwardKeys and the types of data sets and insights which are out there. If ever you thought that data was boring, please prepare to be converted. Enjoy. So, Olivier Ponty, you're very welcome to the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides podcast. Great to have you on the show.
Fantastic to be here. Hi, Jed. Hi, everybody.
Great to have you with us. So look, first of all, I guess, let everybody know you are based in sunny Valencia. Is it sunny? And how's the lockdown going for you guys now?
It's very sunny. That makes being in lockdown very difficult sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah, fantastic destination, Valencia. It's just that the current situation is it's weird. It's really weird. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to walk around for the first time in 6 weeks with my 12-year-old kid, and we walked around in the beautiful historical center, and so nobody. I think we walked around for an hour or so, and maybe we met 20 people. It's really strange to feel that you have the city all for yourself. It's tragic what's happening. It's a disaster for our industry, but there are some moments that are very special, like that walk yesterday. I can tell you, both my son and myself, we loved it. We really needed that.
Yeah, for sure. I hadn't realised that, of course, in Spain. So I'm based in the UK, and we've been allowed to go out for walks. So we've been outside, but of course in Spain you weren't even allowed outside, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
That's kind of
Tough.
harsh. That's kind of harsh.
The situation is very dire.
And of course, when you say you're going outside in Valencia and it's quite empty, the irony is, of course, that's the low season traveler's dream. That's why we travel during the low seasons, is to get that experience. But of course, as we know, it's low season everywhere in the world right now.
Exactly. I think we've all seen these eerie scenes on social medias, drone footage from our big European metropolises being completely empty. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like a science fiction film sometimes.
It's surreal, isn't it? It's surreal. What I find quite amusing is when you might have seen these as well, these posts on social media, which are showing pictures of the canals in Venice, and saying that there's turtles and mermaids, everything's returned back apparently.
Yes. Well, it's I think that's really interesting to put this in context and try to rewind the tape a bit and think of all those discussions regarding over tourism we've had in the past years. On the one hand, now that tourism has virtually disappeared from many of the big European metropolises, it's a good moment to measure the economic value of this activity. And on the other hand, it's also a very dangerous moment for the industry because tourists tend to be considered as the root of the problem. They broke the virus. It always comes from outside. And look at how beautiful our streets and our canals look without tourists, without crowds. I think it's going to be tough for destinations to change the perception of residents and make them accept that tourism is one of the pillars of the local economy and that they need tourists back. there will be a lot of residence management to be
Yeah.
done in the coming weeks, in the coming months. That's for sure.
It's an interesting side to it, isn't it? Like you say, we went from over tourism to no tourism overnight, pretty much. And it
Yes.
was interesting. Low Season Traveler as a website and an organization was supposed to launch fully on March the 20th. And people said to me, "God, it's colossally bad timing for you." And I was saying, well, it is and it isn't. Whilst over tourism was something which I thought was going to hasten changes in the travel industry and the way in which we travel. COVID-19 has just actually accelerated that massively. Um, and I find it interesting. But when you say that, when all the tourists do gather, and when we saw over tourism, it was a previous guest actually, Carolyn Childs. She was saying it's quite funny because you go to these places and you're like, oh, there's too many crowds here. Like everybody else is the crowd, but you're not. And it's like when you're stuck in traffic and you don't realize you're the traffic. You are part of that, but yet you will basically see it as everybody else is the traffic. I'm here with a legitimate reason to be here. Everyone else is the problem, not me.
Exactly, exactly. Well, you're right. I think this crisis is a big accelerator. It's an accelerator for digital transformation, that's for sure. We see that with many, many companies. But it's also an accelerator in the sense that many businesses that are aware of the fact that they should be smarter, using data much more than what they did, they will definitely have to use data. They will have to be smart if they want to survive.
For sure. Look, that brings us very neatly onto. Well, actually, before we go on to ForwardKeys, you were formerly the manager of research at Amsterdam Marketing for just under 6 years. Talk us through what was your role there at Amsterdam Marketing? Obviously, quite a senior position.
Yes, well, the role was to understand travel trends in the situation, but also understand how residents were reacting to those travel trends, engage residents to make them proud of their own city, to make them use all the fantastic cultural supply that the city has to offer. And not only the city, actually, the whole Amsterdam metropolitan area. So it's interesting because I spent 6 years as head of the research and development department of Amsterdam Marketing. But before that, I spent 6 years working as a head of research for the Amsterdam Tourism and Convention Board.
Okay.
And there was a total, switch that took place when Amsterdam Marketing was created. When I worked for the Amsterdam Tourism and Convention Board, the key role was to attract tourists to the destination. So we were really thinking in terms of volumes. We wanted to get more people to the city. Actually, not only to the city, also a bit to the region, but it was mainly about attracting people to the city. And that came in handy when there was the global financial crisis. We really needed those people. Our businesses needed those people. So we needed good data, and we put marketing campaigns in place so that we would get out of this crisis as soon as possible. But then there was a complete change of paradigm. And that's what we're discussing a few minutes ago. All of a sudden, tourists were considered as an issue, as a problem,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we needed to understand better how people traveled, how they booked their trip, what they did during their stay, so that we could improve the uh, uh, how should I put it, the living together of residents, tourists, and businesses, people, being in the city to do business. And that was a real challenge, but that was very interesting as well, because we used pretty much the same data, but in a very different way. And I believe that whole discussion, which was very present in Amsterdam, very quickly expanded to the rest of Europe. There were some destinations already struggling with these issues, like Venice, for example. But Amsterdam was really a hotbed for these discussions about how to manage the destination, how to make this this switch between from destination marketing organizations to a destination management organization. And one of the data sets that we used at Amsterdam to understand better tourism flows, travel trends, and to anticipate travel trends so that we could make the city ready and make the right decisions to prevent um, problems related to overcrowding, was to use ForwardKeys data.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would give us the possibility to know in advance when the city would be particularly busy, and then uh, get ready for it. You know, what does it mean getting ready for an increase in tourist flows when you're a destination? Well, it can be as simple as running campaigns so that you distribute better people across your destination, or you distribute them better in time as well. It can be closing some streets. It can be giving extra visibility to locations, museums, for example, that are less known. You've got a whole array of decisions that you can make from the moment you've got good data.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I was at a presentation last year at an event. Do you remember going to events? Gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't
Yes.
it? I went to an event, and there was somebody there from the Van Gogh Museum. And it was just quite interesting because they were talking about, again, how they manage the flows. Obviously, the Van Gogh Museum, not a particularly large museum, but they've got to obviously manage the flows going through it when the tourists arrive. But one of the things that they said that they'd done, which I just thought, again, it's kind of obvious, but it was, yeah, very, very smart, is they forbade photographs at certain sections of the gallery. So, you know, a lot of people were trying to take a selfie with different pictures, and that was obviously holding everybody up, so you know not as many people were flowing through. So they created an area outside which had large blow-ups of the prints, so people could take their pictures and selfies there instead. I thought that was a really smart way, but it's about managing those kind of crowds through a little bit better.
Exactly. The Van Gogh Museum is really smart.
Yeah,
They've also implemented a system enabling people to buy their tickets in advance. So at some stage, I believe it was not possible anymore to buy your ticket on the spot. You needed
yeah,
to buy it online, and you had a specific time to enter the museum. And that way, in the end, the experience ends up being much better for everybody.
yeah,
You do not wait such a long time before being able to enter the museum. There's much better much better flow
mm-hmm.
within the museum itself. I guess yeah, it's in the end a pretty simple approach, but a very efficient one.
Very effective. Um, so let's move on to your work at ForwardKeys. You've been at ForwardKeys now for a
A
year,
little less.
and I had it somewhere, a year and 8 months I've got. Is that about right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a little bit less than 2 years. Yes.
So talk us through, you know, first of all, for a lot of our listeners, they may have heard of ForwardKeys. They may not be fully aware of exactly what ForwardKeys is and the data and insights that you guys have. Just give us a little bit of an overview to what ForwardKeys does.
Yes, well, if your listeners are not familiar with ForwardKeys, it's not that surprising in the end, maybe because we're really a B2B travel analytics company, and we're based in Valencia, Spain. The core of our business is air travel. We're experts in air travel, and we're a big data company basically. So we've got access to different data sets that give us a good understanding of the different steps of the traveler's journey. And we build intelligence on top of that. So
Yeah,
it's big data and intelligence built on it. So what does it mean? Big data and those different steps of the traveler's journey. Let's start let's start at the beginning. When people have not booked yet and they're just considering visiting a specific destination, it's likely that they're going to use a meta search engine to check prices to go to wherever they feel like going. So um, We have a partnership with Skyscanner
Hmm.
that gives us access to millions of flight searches every day, and that helps us understand the willingness to travel. So what are people considering, which routes, and from the moment that they select an option, what are the prices on which company for any given flight. At first, we thought that this would be a great data set and a great tool for airports because it helps them understand better their catchment area. It helps them plan a network development, that kind of things. But in the current situation with this COVID crisis reshuffling the deck all the time, we realize that it's also a great indicator of people's willingness to travel in general. At the moment, people are not booking flights, but they're still searching for
Mm.
flights. So it's a really interesting indicator because we know what is in people's mind. And at the moment, even if you look at Italians, for example, that have been in lockdown for even longer than we in Spain, um, they're not booking, but they're still searching, and they're searching for
Interesting.
regional flights, but also for exotic long-haul destinations. If you're not going to book anyway, why not dream big and
Yeah.
check out prices for those destinations that are at the top of your bucket list and that you think now you could maybe afford, provided there is a flight leading you there and the destination is willing to welcome you. But
Yeah.
that's a different story. So, anyways, flight searches, yes, it's one of the key data sets that we have. We also look at the capacities that airlines put on the market.
Hmm. What do we mean
We
by
do that.
capacity? Sorry.
Well, which routes are being operated
Yep.
by which airlines? How many seats are put on the market? So it's basically all scheduled capacity worldwide. We have that for the past, we have that for the present, and we have that for the future as well. Although I must say, in the current situation, once more, things are a little bit different because there's a lot of movement here, lots
Yeah.
of flights being cancelled. And when you look at scheduled flights, you know that these can change from one day to the next because airlines are desperately waiting for any positive sign or any sign that will help them efficiently plan capacity in the future.
So just so I'm right on that, that's probably going to be one of the first indicators that we're coming out of this. When an airline on the capacity, when they say, look, we're going to be starting up again our flights from Manchester to Valencia as of the 30th of June, that's probably our first indication that, okay, they obviously think something's going to happen then and people are going to be
Yes, yes.
prepared to book,
Well,
right?
it's a bit the chicken and the egg story. That's
Yeah.
looking at the supply side. The flight searches I've just mentioned, they were looking at the demand side.
Yeah.
So airlines are going to plan capacity if they believe there is enough demand
Okay.
on those routes. But people are not going to be able to book and to travel if there is no capacity.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with the flight searches is that it measures the willingness to travel whether or not an actual route exists between two destinations.
Hmm.
So that gives a good indication of the routes that people would like to be able to take. Maybe I want to travel from Valencia to wherever, to Lviv in Ukraine,
Yeah.
and there is no route. But the fact that I've searched for this itinerary is already indicative of the fact that there is some kind of demand on that specific route, even if it doesn't exist. So,
Okay.
anyways, yes, I think the combination of the two, looking at what the supply side does and what the demand says, is a pretty good way of spotting early signs of recovery.
Yeah.
But the key is, of course, whether or not people book. And that leads me to another of our data sets, bookings. Um, we've got two key data sets here. We've got bookings and we've got ticketing. In both cases, it tells us that a transaction has been made, that people have decided to go from point A to point B. And we know when that trip will take place, how long that trip will last. We know the itinerary that people will take. We have some information about the profile of those travelers, and it's very, very granular. So we really can see very much in details how people are going to travel. And that's absolutely key because from the moment we see some movements on that respect, we can start talking about proper recovery. At least, you know, uh, we can say that the engine has started again.
Yep.
Because at the moment, of course, we're keeping a very, very close eye on bookings being made. But at the moment, there are no bookings being made, and the people that already had booked a trip cancel these trips. They cancel these bookings. So we end up with negative net booking figures, and that's of course a complete drama for the whole travel industry. So the booking data set it's essential. Um, we've been using it for a long time. Our clients have been using it for a long time, but it mainly provides you with information regarding bookings that are made via global distribution systems. So it's only indirect bookings, and then we build some intelligence on top of that. We cross, for example, the booking information with capacity information, with some other uh, data sets to estimate the total volumes of travelers. That's what we call total air market. Uh, so that's a pretty good indicator of uh, what's going on in terms of air travel.
Mhm.
But we've got even better than that in the sense that we have started using, besides the data that we get via global distribution system, we've started using direct bookings from a number of airlines. We've got more than 100 of airlines providing us with a daily feed of tickets being issued. Um, that gives us a much better understanding of travel trends. Uh, and that means that our total market algorithms can get even more precise because there's simply even much more data to work with. So for us, it's a game changer, and we're going to go in production with this new data set in the coming weeks.
I mean, it is. Well, it is. It's the world's most complete data set in terms of air travel. Um,
Correct.
is what ForwardKeys have, and obviously with all of the direct stuff as well. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm just guessing it, but is the sort of, are the profiles for bookings and reservations, are they different for direct versus through travel agencies or tour operators? Is there much of a difference between the two?
It's a bit early for me to
Mm.
tell you that
Yeah.
because, as I said, we've just started using the data, and we're using it in a very special context. With a clear focus on what's happening, the crisis that is unfolding as we speak, and that looks like nothing we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So it's a bit tricky to answer your question given the current situation, but of course we'll investigate as time
For sure,
passes.
for sure. For any of our listeners out there, sometimes I was speaking to my brother about this, and he was saying, "Oh, big data scares me. They've got my data." Just to reassure everybody out there, for anybody that's booked a flight and they're thinking ForwardKeys know who I am and where I live and everything else. it's kind of aggregated, right? It's that
Well, it's
you don't have the names of people and their date of birth or any of this kind of stuff, right?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not that it's aggregated; it's that it's completely anonymous.
Anonymous. Yeah, that's the word I
Yes,
meant.
we know that there is a booking being made for a trip from London to Valencia. We know when that booking was made, via which travel agent, for which date, when the return will take place, in which terminal you will arrive,
Yep.
but we don't know who you are.
Yep.
We simply do not have that information at all.
Yep. Well, quite rightly, it would be scary if you did, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, well, and on
Yeah.
top of that, we wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
Privacy is something we take very seriously, and we've
Sure.
got all processes in place so that we simply never get access to that
Yeah.
information. It never enters our system.
And I guess for your clients, that's the bit ironically that it doesn't really matter, does it? If you're an airport or a tourism destination, what you want to know is how many people are coming in, when they're coming in, what terminal they're coming into, what day they arrive. This is the kind of stuff which
Yes.
you do have. If they're in groups of 2 or 5 or whatever else,
Exactly.
right?
We know the size of the traveling party. Again, we know, for example, if they have booked via a corporate travel agent, most probably they are business
Business traveler.
visitors. And if on top of that, you realize that the booking is for a trip departing on, departure planned on a Tuesday and return on a Wednesday, it's very likely to be a business visitor. So
Yeah.
it's again extra layers of intelligence that you can build on the data that we have built. But for most destinations, what really matters is to understand better how people prepare their trips so that they can be efficient with their marketing campaigns. It can be as simple as knowing when people book their trip so that you know when you should run
Yeah.
your marketing campaign. You can also measure the impact of that campaign. Let's say you have a billboards campaigns in one of the big European metropolises for your destination. You can clearly see if there's any difference between bookings to your destination from that big metropolis before and after you've done the campaign. You can plan better. We were discussing over tourism. Well, one of the reasons for Amsterdam to invest in ForwardKeys data was to better understand, better anticipate the moments when the city would be really busy. So there's many ways for destinations to use this data, but destinations are not the only kind of client that we have.
Hmm.
I don't know, media agencies, for example. They can be interested in knowing in which terminal they should put their posters so that they reach the American business travelers traveling to big European metropolises so that they can sell them new computers or new watches or whatever. So those media agencies, they need that kind of intelligence to be able to tell the watchmaker or the computer maker, you know what, I would advise you to run that campaign in that terminal and during this specific time slot.
Hmm.
It can be as precise as that. We've got the travel retail industry, for example, as a client, or travel retail companies or brands. And what those guys want to know is, first of all, if there's any kind of correlation between sales in their shops and arrivals at the airport. And from the moment, applying machine learning and then developing the right algorithms, from the moment we realize that there is a link between the two, they are able to anticipate sales in their shops, whether or not the shops are located in the airport or in the direct vicinity of the airport. So once you know that, once you can anticipate demand, you can also make sure that your supply chain is in order. You can make sure that you've got the right products available at the right time, that you've got the right stuff, speaking the right languages. That's another way of using the data. So
It's
anyways, whether it's this or car rental companies wondering whether they should put automatic cars or manual cars on the market, endless possibilities.
it's incredible, though, really, isn't it? I've spoken again to members of my family and friends about this, and I think to a lot of our listeners, this will be fascinating. That these companies, the retail companies, etc. They have an idea of who's coming in that terminal the ones that work with ForwardKeys. And they can have an idea on the profiles. I remember one story which has kind of gone down a little bit in folklore because I've told it so many times. But I was speaking to somebody at I think it was the Bally shoe shop in Heathrow, and they would change their window display according to what passengers were coming by. So when there were more West African flights going out and there were more West Africans there, apparently they sold, because they could correlate it with the boarding pass info. You hand your boarding pass at the shop and they log the purchase with the boarding pass. So they would understand how many pairs of red shoes, for example, ladies' red shoes, they were selling on certain flights. So they would then change the window display when those flights were going out, because then they knew they had a better chance of selling them. I mean, it's incredibly sophisticated, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's what's making data-driven decisions look like.
Yeah. I just find it incredible because I don't think that the average person on the street, I don't think they always fully understand that. And I say that probably because I never really did until I started to scratch below. And then you think, gosh, that's exactly it. I was explaining it to my wife. We have this, I don't know if you have in Spain, Tesco,
Hmm.
the Tesco shops. And she always insists whenever I go shopping that I have to get this Tesco loyalty card. And I was saying, you do realize that's just about tracking your purchases. And she's like, no, I get points. I was like, yeah, that's the price you're paying. The price you're paying, you get nothing for free. If you're not paying for anything, it's your data. You are the product. Isn't that what they say? I think
Exactly.
they say that
Exactly.
if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Exactly. Well, I guess it's progress.
Yeah.
It means that companies have a better use of the limited resources that they have. They can be much more efficient in whatever they do, and in the end, that's how we help them. We
Yeah.
help them anticipate travel trends so that they can make the decisions that they think make the most sense.
Yeah.
That's a game changer for many of those companies. For some businesses, it's kind of obvious. Think of the hospitality industry. When you know that people tend to book their flights first and accommodation later, if
Mm-hmm.
you're a hotel and you anticipate travel flights to your destination, you know which yield management strategy is going to be the most profitable for you, because you can anticipate demand. But in some other cases, it's yeah, I don't know, it's a bit more blurry, but
Mm-hmm.
still people see the point, because I don't know, we're talking about brands, for example. They need to be smart about the campaigns that they run, but they also need to take all the logistic um, um, elements into account. If they need to ship a specific kind of product from, I don't know, a warehouse in Hong Kong to either Manila or Kuala Lumpur or Tokyo, it's going to take a few weeks before the products arrive at destination. And that means that you need to be able to anticipate demand if you want to be sure that the right products are in the right place. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit more far-fetched when you think of it, to use air travel data and bookings or tickets to make that kind of logistical decisions. But it works. Otherwise, people would not do it.
For sure. And I guess as well, the likes of, we've talked about as well, destination marketing organizations, tourism authorities, which obviously use ForwardKeys data quite a lot. But I guess hoteliers as well, large hotel groups, they must use your data as well, I guess
Abs-
to understand market. I mean, can they work out their market share, I suppose, to a degree from that, as to whether
Well,
they're getting if they know that the flights are coming into Phuket in such numbers, then they'll know what their bookings are looking like and what their market share is. Is that how it's used, or?
It's used like that. It's used in many different ways. We work with the whole ecosystem,
Yep.
the travel sector. Uh, from the moment people search to the moment they book to the moment they come back home from their trip and start thinking about their next trip. Uh, in some cases, we don't even know what people do with our data. Exactly,
Yeah.
it can be quite secretive because it gives people a competitive edge.
Yeah.
And in some cases, our clients are happy to tell us what they do with the data. And in some other cases, we just don't know. But we know that it's
It's
really helpful
used.
for them because
Yeah.
they they keep renewing their subscriptions.
Yeah.
And we even have some cases of people being so secretive that they don't want other people within their own company to know
Wow.
that they are using data. That's mainly in the financial world that kind of things happen. But
It's incredible.
yeah, I guess it's very relevant.
There's something else that, look, one of your roles, you again, for our listeners out there, Olivier, at ForwardKeys, you go to all of these events and you speak at a lot of functions, webinars now, more and more, I
Hmm.
guess. And one of the things that you always see ForwardKeys in the news, I've seen them on BBC and quoted in the press, is whenever anything bad happens in the world, it seems to be, when something unexpected happens in the world. And I remember when the typhoon Mangonut, hit Asia, and ForwardKeys were called in to give their sort of take on what's happening. And I think it was more in regards to the recovery. Talk us through why ForwardKeys are so popular at those times when stuff goes wrong in the world.
Um, I think that's because we live in a world that is totally interconnected. Well, now a bit less than than a few weeks ago,
Sure.
but still. So what that basically means is that when something happens somewhere, whether it's a hurricane, a terror attack, an epidemic, an airline going bankrupt, whatever, this has an impact on uh, a lot of different sectors in many parts of the world. It's the ripple effect. We're not only looking at the direct impact on the location where, for example, a terror attack took place. We're looking at how this impacts on competing destinations or businesses in the region, how this will impact on overall connectivity, how it will affect people's willingness to travel in general or to travel to a given area.
Mhm.
And it's very uh, it's very special, this ability that we have near real time. I mean, we have all the data with only 48-hour
Wow.
delay, so it's near real time.
Mhm.
So it's very special to know just 48 hours after the fact what the impact of a given event is. So of course, journalists, they know where to find us,
Yeah.
especially in times of crisis. And sometimes we've got some positive news to report, but I must say that most of the time we are approached when something bad happens.
Yeah. I suppose we're coming towards the end of our time, I guess. I think before we go, are there any sort of green shoots, or are there any, is there any positive, is there any positive light you can give us at the end of all of this with obviously all of the data and insights that you guys have?
Well, if I focus on the key indicators that we discussed, we've got more stuff on events, on many other things, but let's focus on what we've discussed so far. Um, on the capacity front, we're not seeing any sign of recovery. Okay, so global air capacity or international capacity is a fraction of what it was a year ago. It's less than 10% of what it was a year ago, and we don't see any change planned for the coming weeks. This may change from one day to the next, but at the moment,
Yeah.
we're not seeing any sign of recovery here for international air travel. When looking at bookings and tickets, same story. No sign of recovery. Cancellations still exceed bookings. So no reason to hope on the very short term here. I think this has to do with the fact that there are still a lot of travel restrictions in place, and people are simply not ready for booking because they don't know if they will be allowed to travel and to come back and under which conditions. So it's still too early for bookings to pick up. There is hope in the third data set, the one on flight searches, because it shows that, again, people still have travel in their minds. They're looking for options for trips in Q3 or Q4, and they're still dreaming about many possible destinations. So the question is, how much of this dreaming will convert into actual bookings? At this stage, we don't know, as long as people have not booked. But it means that there is still hope for the travel industry for destinations because there's still a willingness to travel.
Yep. Well, let's hope that we're allowed to travel again soon. As an aside, I would recommend everybody out there to consider Valencia when it does open up, because it's a beautiful city, isn't it? You've lived there
It
now
is.
for a year and a half.
It
You
is.
know better than anybody, Olivier.
It's a fantastic destination.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Olivier, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you're very busy at the moment. For all of our listeners out there, if they are interested in finding out more, they can go to ForwardKeys, all one word.com. And also anybody in the industry, if you want to follow ForwardKeys, if you follow them on all the social media channels, but in particular Twitter and LinkedIn, then again, ForwardKeys, you guys produce occasionally different reports, and there's webinars, and it's, right up to date, as you were saying, near real time.
We keep producing content to make the crazy world we live in more easy to understand.
Perfect. On that note, Olivier, thank you so much for your time. All the very best.
Thank you very much, Jed. Thank you, and thank you to all the listeners. Bye-bye.
Sincere thanks again to Olivier for taking the time to share his experience with us this week. I can tell you that Olivier and ForwardKeys are in very high demand just now for speaking engagements at webinars and podcasts, so we really do appreciate him taking the time to be with us this week. Thanks as always for your company this week, and if you'd like to learn more about what the travel industry is doing to recover from the coronavirus, we're running a webinar series entitled Keeping the Dream Alive alongside our partners at the World Tourism Association of Culture and Heritage every Tuesday and Thursday throughout May. We'll be hearing from some of the world's leading authorities on tourism recovery, and you can find full registration details on the Low Season Traveller pages on Facebook and LinkedIn, and also on the WTAC website. That's WTACH.org. That's all from us this week. Have a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay home, and don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, and social networks. Our content will always be free for everyone, as we believe that travel is better without the crowds.